some pockets of active weather going on across the United States. We've got severe thunderstorm watches and some warnings going underway in from Virginia into the Delmarva Peninsula. We've got some flood watches in parts of East Texas and western Louisiana, on up into northern Mississippi and a few counties in Tennessee, also in a few counties in Nevada. Otherwise, much of the nation going into this Easter holiday weekend on the quiet side, and we'll tell you all about it and how long it's going to last, because in some places it's going to last for a while. That's all tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, at Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. In spring mode now, so they've got topsoil, sand, and mulch, and anything else that you need to make your home look absolutely spectacular on the outside, or maybe it's your business that you want to make look spectacular on the outside. 631-756-1125, the best prices in town. OmniTrueValue.com is the website. And also our new affiliation with Tempest. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observation network on the planet. They also have other merchandise there as well for you weather enthusiasts. If you use the link that's pinned at the top of the chat board and the coupon code Joe and Joe Weather Show, you get an extra 10% off. That's Tempest by Weatherflow. Okay, it's just me tonight. Okay, I am soloing. And we want to start tonight's show by thanking Robert Russo for being the first person to hit the tip jar tonight. Thank you, Robert. Most appreciated. Now, just to give you some scheduling here. Joe's off tonight. One of our chat board regulars, Dennis Cassia, is being inducted into the Firefighters Hall of Fame in the state of Connecticut. And congratulations to him. And Joe is good friends with Dennis, so he is attending that. So he's left me holding the weather bag, so to speak, though there's not a whole lot of weather going on. We have an absence of major storms. Even in the West, they don't have any major storms threatening over the next 24 to 36 hours. So that's a plus. But we do have a few pockets of weather going on. And this is also going to be, this is Easter weekend, so Easter Sunday. There will not be a Joe and Joe Weather Show this Easter Sunday. So after tonight, we will be back on Monday, okay, which I believe is the 10th of April. So we'll be back Monday at 7:35 p.m. Those of you on the chat board, I hope you have a good weekend planned ahead for you, especially if you're in the Northeast, because the weather looks to be pretty nice, and even down into the northern mid-Atlantic states. We've got some issues in the South Friday and Saturday that we're going to talk about. And then next week, it looks like we're going to get into this very dry-looking pattern that is going to set up for much of the eastern part of the United States. So let's get started tonight. We'll take a look at what's on the watches and mornings map. I kind of went through it at the open here with just a small amount of activity, but the area that is a bit on the busy side tonight is in the east, and we'll take a look. This was earlier on the radar a couple of hours ago when we had looks like about 8 or 9 severe thunderstorm warnings across the state of Virginia and western North Carolina. We're going to give this a quick refresh, and we're down to about a handful here. But it's been busy around the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area and over Chesapeake Bay. You can see the cluster of thunderstorms there, now moving into Delaware. Haven't seen any tornado warnings. Let's give a check to Tornado HQ and see what they have to tell us tonight. And, there's the concentration of severe weather in Virginia and in and around Chesapeake Bay. Those purple boxes you see here, these are all special marine warnings that are up. So we're down to 4 severe thunderstorm warnings that are up. And there was actually, now this was down in Lafayette, Louisiana from earlier. This was back about, almost an hour ago. They had a tornado warning up, a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado over Ridge or 7 miles southwest of Scott, moving east at 20 miles an hour. But everything else here is either severe thunderstorm or a special marine warning. We have the latest. The last severe thunderstorm warning was issued 25 minutes ago. I just kind of wonder whether we've kind of passed the peak now in terms of the development here. This is for Northumberland County in Virginia. The other severe thunderstorm warnings were for Caroline, Kent, Queen Anne's, and Talbot County in Maryland. And then we had one that expired in St. Mary's County in Maryland, and I think that might be just about it. The last one here in Virginia will expire in less than 5 minutes. We're coming up on 7:40 Eastern time, folks. So if you're watching this later on the replay, obviously it's dated, so check weather.gov. But I think if you're watching this overnight, you're probably not going to see much in the way of severe weather to worry about. But this last severe thunderstorm warning that expires in 5 minutes was for Charles City, Chesterfield, Dinwiddie, Henrico, Prince George, Colonial Heights, the city, Hopewell City, and Petersburg, the city, all in the state of Virginia. So that kind of sums up, I guess, most of the severe weather that's going on. There is that one lone severe thunderstorm. If we look down, actually, it's just a special marine warning now. There's been activity across Mississippi and Louisiana and into East Texas, back almost to, but not quite to San Antonio, mostly to the west of Houston. And there were a couple of warnings that popped up here and there, but for the most part, it's been not reaching the level of severe. On the satellite tonight, and I'll give this a fast refresh to bring us up to the current time. And you see the lightning flashes here. Still fairly active from that standpoint, now moving into Delaware and across Chesapeake Bay, down into west central Virginia, into central North Carolina. A couple of scattered cells in and around the Atlanta area tonight, but they're not impacting the Atlanta Braves game. One cell sitting there in Alabama, and then you've got a few other lightning strikes going on across southern Mississippi into southeast Louisiana and over into southeast Texas. We did break out nicely, though, in most areas with sun. Not all. Some places broke out, then went back in the clouds, and then broke out a second time, mainly along the coast of southern New England and Long Island. Didn't quite break up to the extent as it did last Friday. If you remember, we've been talking about the fact that this severe weather event for today was not going to be nearly as robust as that one was, mainly because of the fact that the upper trough is way up to the north in Canada. In fact, it's almost two separate areas here with the cold front that is pushing into the ridge that's along the east coast, and the upper feature got deflected way up to the north near James Bay. So that is the primary difference with respect to this particular event. We've got some clouds coming into the northwest, and we've got some clouds up in parts of Montana and into North Dakota. I'll check the radar back again. We'll take a look out west, and indeed, we do have rain that has come into the Pacific Northwest and down into Northern California, maybe some snow going on in the mountains, but nothing that really is too exceptional from the standpoint of snow. So the Storm Prediction Center, as we take a look, we are seeing they had a slight risk, which they've now sort of edged up into southern New Jersey. And perhaps they think that line may extend a little bit further to the northeast in time. Marginal risk a little bit further to the north than that, not quite to Route 195. Looks like Philadelphia, Trenton, to Northern Ocean County, probably right on that border of the marginal risk. General thunderstorm risk back up to New York City, but the radar really didn't show very much there. Marginal risk down into western North Carolina. Also, we have this marginal risk area from the coastal bend of Texas into Louisiana and Mississippi. And for the next couple of days, not a whole lot. There's a little bit of marginal risk tomorrow in southeast Louisiana, including New Orleans, in southern Mississippi, including Biloxi, and in southern Alabama, including Mobile. But other than that, it's just some general thunderstorm activity from Texas to the Carolinas. And we're also showing a chance for some general thunderstorms in parts of eastern Washington state, western Idaho, and in the eastern part of Oregon. That is for tomorrow into Saturday. And then as we punch up for Saturday into Sunday, a little bit of activity, and this will probably be early in the day in Georgia, Alabama, back to Louisiana, and the northern part of Florida. There'll be a low offshore and a front that'll probably be swinging southward there. And we've got general thunderstorms being indicated for much of Colorado, northern New Mexico, northwest Kansas, and on up into Nebraska, but nothing severe. And as we check out the day 4 to 8 time frame, potential too low right through next week. So it's going to be a quiet week after a really very, very powerful start. There have been nearly, I believe the number is in the high 400s, the number of tornadoes that have already occurred so far this year. It's just under, I believe it was 482 was the number I heard that have been verified by the Storm Prediction Center. So we're on pace here to have a very, very strong season with regards to severe weather. But even in the strongest seasons, you do get a break, and I think the pattern is definitely screaming a break going into next week. Now, as far as rain is concerned, these are the 7-day rainfall amounts. A lot of what you see in the southeast and along the coast from southeastern New England down into Chesapeake Bay and east northern Virginia is tonight's weather front going by, because I don't think there's going to be much through next Thursday night, which is the 7-day period starting tonight to 8 o'clock tonight till 8 o'clock next Thursday night. And in the Carolinas, we're looking at what could be 2 to 3 inches of rain. Again, much of this may come to Saturday into early Sunday. You see the heavy rains just offshore as well. We've got some big rain amounts in coastal Louisiana and Mississippi, and also on the western part of the Florida Panhandle, parts of southeast Texas. 3/4 of an inch to an inch extends up into southern Arkansas, northern Mississippi, eastern Tennessee, and southernmost Virginia. So, again, this is from the lead system now, because once this is out of the way, even this area is going to be quiet for a while. The Pacific Northwest on the busy side, particularly along the coast, where we've got several to many inches that may fall in the next 7 days. A lot of dry areas from Maine down to Pennsylvania, west of the Ohio Valley, in and around the Great Lakes. Precip is generally 1/4 of an inch or less. Hardly any precip in the plains, and also dry in the southwest. A little bit of light precip along the coast and coast of California, going down to about San Diego, but nothing major here is being indicated. Just for laughs, let me bring up let's just take a look and see what the story is with regards to snow, because there probably won't be very much, but let's take a look. We'll let the map load, and this takes us through 8 p.m. Sunday. So if you want a white Easter, you can go to Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, where there could be a few inches, a coating to an inch in the lower peninsula of Michigan, and about an inch or two in the upper peninsula of Michigan. Some scattered snows in North Dakota, some scattered snows out in the west. But even here, I mean, in a place where we've been used to seeing it come down on the order of 6 and 7 and 8 feet at a time, it's pretty quiet here. Excuse me, right through the weekend and into early next week. So the upper air pattern that we're setting up, I would say it's a little unusual in that we're going to get into a nice ridge position into the eastern part of the United States for the most part, and I think it's going to be the kind of week in the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states anyway, that unless there's a backdoor cold front that comes down, and oftentimes when we're looking in the spring months in particular, you don't always see the backdoor cold front. in 6 or 7 or 8 days out. But then when you get closer, suddenly there's a little short wave that comes down in Canada and sweeps across New England, and that creates a little bit of a backdoor issue. But unless something like that pops up, I think most of this coming week is going to be fine. You'll notice that the flow is basically west to east. The heights that you're seeing here, the lines that you see drawn across, they are actually higher than normal. So it's a warmish weather pattern. Any flows of cold air would be in the blue, and that's up in northern New England. It's up in southeastern Canada and New Brunswick, over Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, and then a little bit kind of nosing up just north of the Pacific Northwest. At least that's what we're seeing when we get to Saturday, but I'll just back it up a little bit here. There's that upper trough, and again, instead of, just like last week, instead of moving across, this one went straight up north of Minnesota, goes way to the north. So this front is really just sort of pushing against this upper ridge that's off the coast, and it's just going to flatten it out. And there's a little ripple shortwave that's down in Texas, and that is going to just sort of slide along to the east. You'll notice the upper flow as we go through the weekend in the northeast turns more northwest. So this system that's down in the south, and this is early Sunday morning at 2 a.m. There's a little short wave right here, so there'll probably be some kind of surface low there. But, here's our upper flow. I mean, we just basically have got this brick wall thanks to an upper low that's way out to the northeast off the map, probably somewhere out here, near or north of Newfoundland or eastern part of southeastern Labrador. So that is going to keep this northwest flow. It's going to keep things on the dry side. And it'll probably be a bit on the chilly side, particularly on Saturday, because there might even be some high clouds from some of that southern moisture to veil the sun a bit. That'll hold the temperatures down. But other than that, there really isn't much happening. The system to the south, as I said, gets ejected. And then as we move into Monday and Tuesday, we still got a bit of a flow that's coming down out of Canada, but this is dry. Look, there's a ridge back here in the west. Right in here, you got this ridge back here in the western part of the United States. I mean, that is just not going to really be conducive for any kind of moisture at all. The little cutoff low there in East Texas and Louisiana, so that might be problematic. You see there's a cutoff that's out in the Atlantic, well east of the Carolinas, from that system that comes off on Sunday. That's not going to be a concern for us. And you start to see some energy coming into the northwest on Wednesday with an upper low moving into Colorado. Still got some action there right along the Gulf Coast. And I know there's been few people kind of pointing out the fact that the model's been trying to develop a low in the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, somebody had to play it out as if there was going to be a subtropical storm there. If there's a subtropical storm in April, it's pretty rare. So to forecast it, it takes a lot of guts, and I certainly am not going to be forecasting that. I would assume that this is a cold feature. If you look at this at least aloft, that's a cold feature that's sitting there right near Mobile next Wednesday. So it's hard for me to imagine that you get anything subtropical. And meanwhile, that ridge in the west kind of snakes its way over the top into the eastern part of the United States toward the end of next week. So unless we see some kind of backdoor issue, we're going to have warmer than normal temperatures pretty much all week. Now, next week, if the model's correct, you've got energy coming into the west again, of course, and some of it dropping down into California. That tries to kick along that system that's in the lower Gulf states and starts to try to lift it up into the Appalachians, but it's kind of weakish. It's still there, but it's kind of weakish. So that might complicate things a bit maybe next weekend to some extent. But overall, this is a pretty warm flow. And then after that, we do actually get a trough to come down around the 17th or 18th of April, which would be on the chillyish side, if there's a way to put it. So we do get some troughing back after next week that might bring some cool air. So as warm as it might get on several days next week, this will spark you back to reality if it winds up verifying. And then, of course, once that goes in, it pulls out, but then there's what looks like another system behind it. But at least for next week, it does look to me like it's going to be on the tame side. So let's bring the surface map up and take a look at what's happening. So there's your front is right here. Goes all the way down into the Gulf states. Got a nice cool high behind it. And again, it's all about pushing it, flattening out the ridge. The front goes offshore, kind of hangs around. This is Saturday morning, and you see the rain there that spreads across the Gulf states and into the southeast and into the Carolinas and southern Virginia. Kind of noses its way up into the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula. That's about as far north as it gets. So this is why on Saturday there might be some high clouds that may get up into southern New England, into the Hudson Valley, and that might hold temperatures down. And there might be more of an overcast when you say go to southern New Jersey, down into the Delaware and northern Virginia. So this could be one of those upside down type of days where it's actually temperatures are a little lower as you go south than they are going north, because there's going to be more sun. Even though the air is colder up in New England, there's going to be more sun as you head up to the north. And then the high settles overhead. Saturday, the low pulls out Sunday morning and moves away. Those of you in the southeast, you get this rain gone. Looks like Easter Sunday should be fine. In fact, the rain is mostly gone by early Saturday evening, if this is right. And Sunday should be a pretty nice day up and down the East Coast, except for maybe right along the Carolinas with some leftover clouds. You'll notice in the west, there's a system coming in. Just back it up. There's one coming in tonight that's bringing rain and some lighter snows, if you want to call it that, but nothing extraordinary. And because of the flow, the way it is, the system is not really going to translate east of the Rockies very much. It comes into that ridge and just sort of dies out. There's another round of rain on Monday there. And there's your system in the Gulf, by the way, for Tuesday and Wednesday. You see it there. It just makes a little low, and then it kind of turns northwestward. Again, I would just, looking at the upper air, I would probably, to me, that looks like a cold core type system, and brings rains along the Gulf Coast. The high protects the areas inland. And then, of course, in the northeast, if we're on the lookout for a back door, certainly don't see one Monday and Tuesday. Might be a little weak front that goes by, but it's a northwest flow behind it come on Wednesday. I don't think it really will do very much. Might actually be warmer after the front goes by than cooler. And yeah, no sign of a backdoor through next Friday. So that's good news. Now we're starting to see that Gulf flow trying to lift northward, but it's very weak. But it does bring the chance maybe that we could see some shower activity scattered around on Saturday, maybe into next Sunday. Hard to say. And then a more important front comes through beyond that. And that brings down a chilly high from Canada this is Monday the 17th. So this would be Tuesday the 18th. And it's got some kind of low that comes out of the Gulf there and goes out east-northeast and goodbye. So overall, I mean, there's no major storms looking around in the overall pattern for the next 6-7 days and maybe even longer. These seem to be just what I would sort of describe as minor-ish systems, and that would be about it. So I can come back now. It's not a whole lot here, folks. Let's give a quick check. Let me just give a quick check to the radar, see what's going on. If there's anything new here. Excuse me. Hang on just 1 second. By the way, if we look at the radar, I'll get myself out of here again in a moment. There you go. So we'll look at the radar here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. We've got showers up in New Vermont, New Hampshire, and southern Maine. And then there's a break in the middle. Some of the models actually showed this happening. So they canceled some ball games today that they didn't have to cancel, believe it or not. But the activity did wind up happening further south where there was maximum daytime heating going on and a much more unstable atmosphere than there was in places further to the north. So that that pretty much explains the sharp cutoff. I think I saw what could be a new severe thunderstorm warning. Let's take a look. And come on. There you go. So we might have a couple of new severe thunderstorm warnings using Tornado HQ here. No, the last one was, oh yeah, there is, I'm sorry, there's a couple. So we have in Maryland, this was 18 minutes ago while I was yapping, a severe thunderstorm 8 miles northwest of Prince Anne, moving east at 30. Covering Somerset, Wicomico, and Worcester counties in Maryland. Special marine warning near Deal Island. I assume that's in Chesapeake Bay. And that's moving east at 30 knots. And then there was one issued 9 minutes ago for Kent, Caroline, Queen Anne's, and Talbot in Delaware and Maryland. A severe thunderstorm located near over Carville or near Centerville, moving east at 40 miles an hour. And once again, just a reminder, folks, if you're watching this on a replay later tonight, go to weather.gov to check out the latest with regards to severe weather. But we've been so, used to, we've had two major severe weather events in a handful of days. So now we've just got a smallish one, which is a lot easier to handle, for sure. So, just want to see if anybody has any questions on the chat board. Easter Sunday, going to be pretty nice here. Models showing low 50s with the sun. Hopefully you'll hit 60. I think you should be able to do 60 on Sunday as long as there's the clouds get out of the way for you, Tyler. It will definitely be cooler than today. Yes, it did warm up pretty quickly. It was another instance of a warm front making its way and pushing its way pretty far north, but did not set up for that potential for a severe weather event. Just scanning the chat board here. Yeah, they rained the Mets out. No, they really. I mean, it used to be they wouldn't. If a game got underway and it started raining, they would wait forever to call it. But now, they preempt it now. I guess there's too much money involved between television and everything else. So they just do a preemptive call, and sometimes it's a good call, and sometimes it's a not so good call. When the thermometer was in the shade, Tyler says it hit 80 to 81. Actually, you should mention, by the way, record highs today in New York City. In the surrounding airports, all hitting record highs in the upper 70s and low 80s. So it was indeed a very, very warm and unusually warm day. We're still in early April when the average high is probably still under 60. It's probably at about 58 or 59. So you're talking 20 degrees above normal. Steve LaPointe, Easter Sunday, should do one Sunday night, except I am going to not be able to do that. I'm not going to be home until late Sunday night. So taking the day and spending it with my family down in Atlanta. So, but there's not much happening. So we'll just hold it off until Monday. I'm just running back along here. Any other... We've had 9 months since last July of above average temperatures in New Jersey, Frank Riccio. Yep. It goes on and on. By the way, I don't know. It was on last night, but if you get to see it, I could not watch all of it, but because I was just too tired and I was falling asleep, but I'm going to watch the rest part I didn't see. Nova on PBS last night. Very, very interesting, fascinating story about these craters that are showing up in Siberia and now in Alaska. And apparently, and these craters are being formed where the ground actually explodes. And what's happening is the permafrost, the melting of the permafrost is releasing methane gas, which is highly flammable once it hits the air, and it builds up. And you see they have video of one of these craters where the land just literally explodes and throws debris all over the place. And these craters are 150 feet or more deep. And they showed one in Alaska where the methane was bubbling up into a lake, and they went down to see where it was coming from, and they're sort of investigating as to how the methane manages to get through the ice. In some instances, it's just ice permafrost, but in Alaska, there's all these fault lines that are there, and apparently the methane is sort of finding its way through the fault lines, and it shows how the topography is changing because of it, how the forests are changing because of it. And what was really interesting was they went on, I know Alfred Phillips isn't here tonight. I wish he were, because he might be able to elaborate a little bit on this. He's our friend that watches from Wainwright, Alaska. But they went to, and I don't even remember how to pronounce it. It starts with a U. It's the northernmost city in North America, and it's in northern Alaska, so it's part of the United States. And the people there, they have tunnels down in where the permafrost is, and they use it as basically giant freezers. So these are folks that hunt for their food. There's no Walmart, there's no supermarkets or anything like that. So they hunt for their food year round, and they store it in these caves under the permafrost. And they were talking, it was really fascinating to see. And they were saying how now they have to. It used to be they would just be able to put the meat in there, and they hunt whale, they hunt seal, they hunt elk, and other things, and they would put the meat there, and it would keep all through the winter months without having to check it. But now, apparently, because of temperature rises there up in the Arctic, that sometimes they have to take the meat out of those freezers and move them out of those caves, and then move them to someplace else, or even just put them in a standard deep freeze. So it was Nova last night. If you happen to, sometimes on the weekends, PBS, depending on where you live, may be showing it. Definitely worth the time to take the time out to watch it. It was it was quite fascinating indeed. Okay, yes, Steve Lapointe. Some people are still waiting for historic storms. This is why I don't go off the deep end when it comes to the long range, because, you got a pretty good chance of not happening. Let's see. Christina Pedia says, I have my jailbroken Fire Stick. I can watch anything I want whenever I want. So go ahead and see if you can. I'm sure you could probably find it. It's on there, and it was really good. Nick M., what's the difference between El Nino and La Nina in relation to winters in the Northeast? That would depend, Nick. And first of all, thank you for hitting the tip jar. Most appreciated. So that will depend, excuse me, on the strength of the El Nino. If it's based in the East Pacific or if it's based in the Central Pacific. In other words, is the greatest concentration of above normal temperatures is more in the Central Pacific as opposed to in the Eastern Pacific. Supposedly, that is net positive for a colder winter in the Northeast. But at the same time, you have to look at what's going on in the stratosphere and what's going on up in the tropics. I'm sorry, in the Arctic region, to see if we get any kind of blocking pattern, which we know is much more of a shorter term phenomena as opposed to what the El Nino is. Now, if it's a super El Nino, then it's probably overall not conducive unless a window opens up. We saw that happen in 2015, 2016 with that super La Nina. So, I'm sorry, super El Nino. The La Nina, again, depending on the strength of the La Nina, is going to be also a problem for the East. if the La Ninas are weak, then that would probably make it less, let's say less unfavorable. All right. We saw that in I guess it was the winter of 2021, where we had two distinct 3-4 week windows that opened up in the overall La Nina pattern. So, but a super La Nina or a very strong La Nina, like obviously what we had this year, is problematic. And of course, there was no blocking that developed other than what happened in December before the whole La Nina pattern just basically took over. California's Ghost Lake is back and is covering California's Central Valley. Lots of roads and houses, farmland underwater. Yes, a ton of rain there. Okay, let's see. All right, so Ms. Fowler, I'll check with Scott because he's the one who he researches this stuff. So I will ask him. He'll check it and we'll see what we come up with. But I guess it's quite possible that it's March rather than April. But I will, if once I hear from him, I will issue a correction. Okay, and we'll straighten it out. Okay, let's see. Yes, it's called. Okay, so Christina Pedia was able to find it. It's season 49, episode 1, and it aired on 2/2/22, February 2nd, 2022, called Arctic Sinkholes. So I guess I must have saw something on a repeat last night that they were running. Here. Okay, so I guess we could call it a night. I guess we'll call it a night. All right. So thanks very much for joining me tonight. And Joe and I will be back Monday at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll see you then. So everybody have a great weekend and a happy Easter. And see you on Monday. Nighty-night.